When the head of America's top law enforcement agency struggles to recall the country's deadliest domestic terror attacks, something deeper is broken. The hesitation wasn't just awkward, it was chilling. Charleston, Pittsburgh, El Paso, Buffalo, names that echo through American memory as symbols of hate-fueled violence, yet in that hearing room even those horrors seemed to fade into bureaucratic fog. Viewers didn't see confidence. They saw confusion, denial, and a question that cut through every word spoken that day. How can a nation fight extremism if its own leaders can't call it by name? Because this wasn't some obscure history quiz.
Lady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, for coming here today. And actually, thank you for your response to my colleague from New York who asked you earlier about violent extremism, and you said that there is violent extreme ideology on both sides, and I think you actually alluded to that same statement yesterday in the Senate. So I too have some questions I'd like to ask you. These are not gotcha questions, and just deny, please, what you deem to be false. So Dylan Roof, who followed white supremacist propaganda, murdered 9 black parishioners in Charleston in 2015. Do you deny this?
I'm sorry. Dylan Ruth?
Roof?
Roof, can you give me some more information?
You're head of the FBI, you probably know this. If you don't know, that's fine.
If you can give me a reminder, I've got a lot in front of me.
It was national news. Robert Bowers murdered 11 Jewish worshipers in Pittsburgh in 2018.
I do remember that.
And it was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack. So do you admit that that happened?
Yeah, I'm not saying the other thing didn't happen. I'm just asking for a little information.
Patrick Cruces, who posted a manifesto about a Hispanic invasion, walked into a Walmart in El Paso, Texas in 2019 and began firing. He murdered 23 people that day, and the youngest was 15. Do you admit or deny that that happened?
I'll take your presentation as accurate.
All right, well, I have to say all of these cases have been adjudicated. As I said, they are not gotcha questions. These incidents were national news. And as director of the FBI, you have access to all of this information. So in 2022, Peyton Grendon walked into a supermarket in a black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, and started shooting. He murdered 10 people that day. And on September 10th, your friend Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Tyler Robinson has been taken into custody and charged, but also on that day, Desmond Holley, a 16-year-old white male, shot and injured 2 students at a high school in Colorado before killing himself. And according to the Anti-Defamation League, he had a fascination with mass shootings and white supremacy. So do you admit to, deny these facts?
Those happened.
Okay. Your predecessor, former FBI Director Christopher Wray, said that one of the most dangerous concerns is that racially motivated violent extremism, especially white supremacists, has been the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism cases and is responsible for the most lethal attacks over the last decade. Do you admit or deny, A, that he said this?
I'll let the record reflect that. Whatever he said was what he said.
All right, and do you agree?
That there is racially motivated crimes being committed in America, yes.
Yes, especially white supremacists, which is the biggest chunk of our domestic terrorism. I'm glad that you said this. So last week, President Trump was asked if there were extremists on both the left and the right. He was actually asked this by Fox and Friends, and his exact words were, "I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. The radicals on the left are the problem, and they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy." Do you agree with the president?
I don't speak for the president. The president speaks for himself.
Do you agree with the president?
I don't. On what matter?
On the question that I just asked, do you agree with his statement about the radical left?
That there's ideology that's driving violence on both sides? Yes, that's what he acknowledged.
No, he didn't. He didn't. Okay. But I'm glad that you're saying that and actually creating some separation between you and the president. And I'm glad that you
That's literally
are
not what happened. He said
acknowledging
both.
that there is violent extremism on both sides. What's interesting is that the research arm of the Department of Justice, the National Institute of Justice, do you know what that is?
I'm familiar with them.
Okay, great. It is the research arm of the Department of Justice, and it published an article in 2024 devoted to domestic radicalization, violent extremism, and terrorism. I have it. It's interesting that it's no longer on the website. It has been scrubbed, but I ask these questions because what makes a strong, qualified director of any business, of any household, of the FBI, what makes a reputable prosecutor is not lapdog loyalty, but a commitment to the creed that evidence is agnostic and that the evidence will lead you to making the right decisions. And your job, no one's job is to like the data or the evidence, it is to collect it. That is how you gain trust. And Mr. Chair, I would like to enter into the record, if I may. White supremacist group stands by racist ideology with unanimous consent.
Without objection.
Dylan Roof, the radicalization of the alt-right and ritualized racial violence.
Without objection.
Thank you. Another article, how Robert Bowers went from conservative to white nationalist. I'd like to enter that into the record with me.
Without objection.
Patrick Cruces believed he was fulfilling Trump's wishes in El Paso attack, his attorney said. I'd like to enter into the record.
Without objection.
Buffalo shooting, how far-right killers are radicalized online. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Evergreen High School shooters online activity reveals fascination with mass shootings, white supremacy. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Murder and extremism in the United States in 2024, a report by the Anti-Defamation League. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
And the article, the report that was scrubbed from the DOJ just recently, National Institute of Justice Journal focusing on domestic radicalization, violent extremism, and terrorism. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
And lastly, the libertarian think tank Cato and their analysis on violent extremism and the right rising in extremist acts. I'd like to enter that into the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
These were the darkest pages of recent memory: churchgoers, worshippers, families at a supermarket, all ambushed by men radicalized by white supremacist propaganda. Everyone watching knew the stories. Everyone remembered the heartbreak. But as the Congresswoman pressed for simple acknowledgement, the nation saw something else, an FBI director hesitating to affirm the undeniable, and that hesitation spoke volumes. What happens when leadership avoids clarity? When truth itself becomes negotiable? That's the uncomfortable question this hearing exposed. Because Representative Sidney Kliger Dove didn't come armed with opinion, she came armed with facts. She listed tragedy after tragedy, asking only for confirmation that these events happened, that this violence existed, that its motives were clear. And the pauses, the uncertainty, the "can you remind me" responses, they hit harder than any political speech could. Charleston, a church. 9 lives taken by a man radicalized online. Pittsburgh, a synagogue. 11 worshippers gone in a single morning. El Paso, a Walmart. 23 innocent people murdered. Buffalo, a grocery store. 10 more victims of hatred. Each of these names carries pain, history, and a truth that can't be blurred by partisanship. Yet in that room you could almost feel the weight of denial, the kind that hides behind cautious phrasing and political loyalty. And that's what made this hearing so different. Because it wasn't just about one official's memory, it was about what that hesitation represents: the growing unwillingness to confront extremism when it's politically inconvenient. There's a phrase investigators use: evidence is agnostic. It doesn't care who it offends or what party it implicates. It leads where it leads. But that's not what we're seeing anymore. Evidence gets bent, delayed, or dismissed to fit narratives. And when that happens at the FBI, the agency meant to be neutral above all else, it's not just a scandal, it's a warning. Kliger Dove reminded the country that data doesn't lie. The FBI's own former director said it plainly: racially motivated violent extremism, especially white supremacy, has been the most lethal domestic terror threat in America for over a decade. That's not speculation. That's documented fact. Yet how often do we hear leaders acknowledge it without hesitation, without deflection? Rarely. It's easier to say extremists on both sides than to face the numbers. It's easier to blur the lines than to take a stand. But every time that happens, it sends a message to those consuming hate online, to those finding community in violence, that silence is permission. The pattern is undeniable. Radicalization doesn't always start in the dark corners of the internet anymore. It starts in daylight, in comment sections, podcasts, and platforms where conspiracy becomes culture. And while many of these individuals act alone, the ideology they follow is shared, organized, and thriving. So when an FBI director hesitates, it's not just forgetfulness, it's fear. Fear of political backlash, fear of headlines, fear of speaking an uncomfortable truth out loud. But courage isn't about comfort, it's about calling things what they are, even when it risks your position. Kliger Dove didn't raise her voice, she didn't grandstand. She calmly read the facts into the record, each attack, each manifesto, each statistic, and asked for recognition. Piece by piece, she reconstructed a truth that had been buried under politics. She even cited the Department of Justice's own research, studies that once lived on the government's website before quietly disappearing. Studies that confirmed what experts have said for years: white supremacist violence is the most persistent and deadly domestic threat America faces. And then came the quiet part, the moment that hit harder than any headline. Because while she listed tragedy after tragedy, her real question was simple: do you admit these things happened? That question wasn't rhetorical, it was a test of integrity, and it revealed exactly how fragile truth has become when even the basics, murder, ideology, radicalization, have to be debated in real time before the cameras. Let's be clear. This isn't about party lines or political labels, it's about reality versus narrative. Every administration struggles with the optics of acknowledging internal threats, but when the fear of political damage outweighs the duty to protect citizens, the cost is measured in lives. Because far-right terrorism isn't hypothetical, it's Charleston, it's El Paso, it's Buffalo, it's the recurring nightmare that keeps replaying while leaders argue semantics. And every delay, every denial gives extremists more time to regroup, recruit, and rebrand under new slogans. The irony: the FBI once prided itself on following evidence without bias. That's the foundation of its credibility. But today critics argue it bends too often under political gravity. It's not that agents on the ground don't care, they do. It's that leadership fears the headlines that honesty brings. And the danger of that fear, it's not just institutional, it's generational. Because when young Americans see hesitation from authority, when they watch truth filtered through partisanship, they start believing facts are optional. They start thinking reality depends on which side of the aisle you're on. That's how societies fracture, not through violence alone, but through disbelief. Kliger Dove's message was simple: leadership isn't about loyalty, it's about truth. Whether you lead a business, a community, or a federal agency, the standard is the same. You don't shape facts to fit comfort. You follow the evidence wherever it leads. That's how trust is built, and yet here we are, still debating what everyone already knows, still pretending that domestic terrorism can be softened into extremism on both sides, still watching hearings where officials hesitate to name killers who wrote their motives in black and white. The most dangerous part of this entire exchange wasn't the denial, it was the normalization. The idea that hesitation is acceptable, that memory lapses are fine, that accountability can wait. But the victims of Charleston, Pittsburgh, El Paso, and Buffalo can't wait. Their families can't. Their communities can't. The Congresswoman's closing words captured it best: democracy doesn't defend itself, it depends on us. So here's what this moment demands, from the FBI, from Congress, from every viewer watching this unfold: honesty, real honesty. The kind that isn't afraid to name the threat, even when it's politically inconvenient, because without that, no investigation, no policy, no law can stop what's already growing. And if we want to break this cycle, it starts with truth, saying it, owning it, acting on it. Far-right violence isn't a debate, it's a documented crisis. It's not both sides, it's not complex, it's measurable, it's traceable, and it's killing Americans. The hesitation to say that out loud isn't neutrality, it's neglect. But here's the thing: every time someone like Sidney Kliger Dove steps into that hearing room and forces the record to remember, it chips away at that silence. It reminds the system and the public that accountability still has a voice. So as viewers, we can't just scroll past, we can't just sigh and move on, because awareness is our weapon, and engagement is our defense. If leaders won't say the truth loudly, then it's up to us to echo it. Don't let this moment fade into another clip on social media. Let it be a reminder that silence protects no one, that justice isn't partisan, that memory matters. Because until truth becomes louder than comfort, the cycle continues. If you believe accountability matters, if you think leadership should mean courage, then make sure this story reaches as many people as possible. Hit that subscribe button, share this video, and help keep the focus where it belongs, on truth, justice, and the fight for a democracy that doesn't look away. Stay informed, stay awake, and never stop asking the questions that make power uncomfortable.